Welcome to another edition of Salt Baked Patient Profiles. Tiffiny Malo.
Thank you.
Pleasure. So, to kick things off, tell us a little bit about your experience with cannabis, how you came to it, what symptoms brought you to the cannabis recovery, and we'll go from there.
All right. Well, it actually started out with my son. My son, ever since he was probably about 16 years old, suffered from chronic back pain. It was about the time that he was 18 years old that we actually started taking him seriously. We used to tease him all the time and tell him that he was the oldest young person we ever knew. So.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
How did he take that?
We actually feel really bad. So from the time he was 18 to the time he was about 26, he was in and out of doctor's offices. He, started out with family practice doctor, eventually got to the point where he got a referral for a neurologist, and then different, specialists. And then eventually got to the point where they just sent him to a pain management clinic.
Right.
And of course, he's an adult at this time. He has his own insurance. And so mom is not really kept in the loop at this time. I thought for sure once they got him to pain management that they were really going to do everything they could to make sure that they kept him off of drugs, any sort of narcotics. Thought they were going to find, alternative medicine, whether it was, physical therapy, I don't know, just anything, whether it was, essential oils. I don't care what it was. They were just going to do their best to keep him off of the drugs. And then over time, it got to the point where they couldn't find out what was wrong with him. MRI after MRI, visits with the neurologist, they still couldn't seem to figure out exactly what was causing the nerve pain in the lower portion of his back. And so, of course, in the meantime, he's getting his nerves burned. And then he's also now slowly taking different opioids to help him control that pain. And they, of course, start him out with some lower medications. I'm not even sure exactly what those are. Eventually, he got to the point where they were giving him OxyContin. He got to the point where he was taking 90 milligrams of OxyContin every single day and 30 milligrams of morphine at night so that he could sleep.
And he was 16, you say, at that point?
That was about 18 years old when they started doing that.
18.
Yeah, when he was 18 years old. And, honestly, I, trusted my son, of course, because he's handling this on his own. And I'm trusting the doctors. I'm trusting the doctors to do what's right for him. Mm-hmm. And really didn't even think twice about the number of medications that he was taking, because I was really naive. Thought for sure that they had his safety in mind, that there isn't any possible way that they were going to keep him on a medicine that was going to become an addiction for him.
Yeah, sure.
And so it was actually not until my youngest brother, who is really, really close with my son, and he mentioned it to my mother. He says, I think that, my nephew is addicted to Oxy. So my mother went ahead and had a conversation with me, and I had sat down and had that conversation with my son. And my son was very embarrassed. He was, that's all I can explain it. He was really, really embarrassed.
Well,
and so
it sounds like such a shock to hear as a non-parent, but it's not something you typically hear, an 18-year-old being embarrassed to discover that they have an issue with a substance that their doctor provided for them. What
right.
A weird place to be.
Well, and he wasn't even 18. So of course doctors didn't go, hey, we're going to throw Oxy at you at the age of 18. Sure. Eventually they slowly did work up to it. And I think he may have been about 25. Yeah, because he's 29 years old now. Yeah. He was about 25 years old when the addiction was really, really prevalent. Okay. When family members were starting to notice. And at that time, he lived on his own. He hung out with my brother more. They're only 6 years apart in age.
Right.
And so they were really good friends. So I had no clue. And my son didn't think that it was a possibility either. But as he's going on with his treatment, he's finding the opioids are helping less and less. And so he actually branched out, started doing some research on his own, and found cannabis. And so he had a conversation at some point, and I'm not quite sure exactly when and what age he was, but he had a conversation with the PA that he was seeing over at his pain management clinic. And the PA did exactly what you would expect and what he had to do. And said, well, you know, I can't do anything about that. You do what you need to, and that's it. But it was about 25, at the age of 25 years old, when I talked to him, I confronted him about the addiction, that he became more open with me. And there was one day he called me up and he says, they just kicked me out of my pain clinic. And I said, well, why? And he says, well, you know, they drug tested me. They found THC in my system. And so they've kicked me out of pain management, which...
Is this before or after Prop 2, Tiffany?
This is before. This was 2016, September, I believe. One of the reasons that I remember the date pretty clearly was because my son and I and his girlfriend, we all decided that, okay, when we found out that the pain clinic wasn't going to do anything to help him, okay, it was actually completely shocking. I says, okay, so what's the pain clinic going to do now that they know that you're addicted to these drugs? Are they going to do anything to help you whatsoever? And he says, no, they just said I can't come back. So, you know, he's like, I'm going to do my best to go ahead and beat this on my own. We're going to detox. And so he and his girlfriend assured us that they had it under control. And once again, you know, we were kind of naive.
Sure.
We thought it is a prescription drug. They're going to be fine. They can go ahead and beat this on their own. And so I was actually at work when I got a phone call from my daughter-in-law, and she was frantic. She said that my son was convulsing, cold sweats. He was angry, is all she could say. And she says, I need you now. And so I actually hopped online really quick. Well, I had actually been doing some research prior to that on natural ways that we could detox somebody at home. My son worked for a small company here in Utah. He was a programmer. He was their lead programmer. And they didn't have short-term disability. They didn't have family medical leave, anything like that. They had 50 employees. So we had to detox him as quickly and as naturally and as quietly as possible. And so I'd actually been doing some research, and I found that a lot of people had detox from opioids using kratom and even using cannabis. So he had the cannabis covered. I went ahead and found as much kratom as I could. And the reason that I remember it was September of 2016 is because at that time, I don't know if it was the FDA or the DEA, they were in the process of trying to ban kratom altogether.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead, went to the nearest smoke shop. I bought all the kratom that I could, brought it over to my son, and the kratom helped help all of those symptoms, those withdrawal symptoms subside a little bit.
Tiffany, may I ask, your son and yourself, when you came to cannabis, while he was using opioids for his pain management, he discovered cannabis also helped? Or what was the experience going on? Did it mitigate his need for the drugs all the time?
It didn't. He was experimenting. He did find that cannabis helped with pain.
Yeah.
But of course, at that time, he was getting off the black market, so it was difficult to find the strains that he needed. And so he really did a lot of research into, and that's one thing that he does. He does lots of research into everything, and found cannabis, and found that it helped with his pain. As he did more research, he found out that there were particular strains out there that could be better than others.
For instance,
and so,
what did you discover? I'd love to hear that.
Some of the ones that he actually discovered were AC/DC. AC/DC is, at the time, when he first moved to Colorado, because he lives in Colorado now, was one of the highest CBD strains that he could find.
Right.
He also found Mazar Sharif. He found Harlequin. And so at some point when the kratom and the cannabis that he was getting off the street was no longer helping the pain, and that was really what we had to control with the withdrawal symptoms.
Mhm.
When that was no longer working, he and I made a trip to Colorado and purchased the strains that we could find. The ones that he actually found were really good for pain, and we had great results. And so didn't help him when we came back to Utah though, you know. And so at that time we went ahead and came up with a plan. You know, he eventually did end up losing his job with his company.
What did other friends and associates or family have to say about your cannabis exploration at that point?
You know, with my son, he kept everything very quiet, and so nobody really knew. Nobody really knew at all. We did it kind of in secret. And, you know, we got him, after he lost his job, he actually moved in with us here. And we did everything we could to help them save up their money. And then a year later, they actually got out to Colorado. They've been in Colorado about 2.5 years now.
Oh, good for them.
Yeah, it's actually been excellent for him. So it was September 2016 that all of that started. And so I started to do my research and eventually found groups in Utah that were already working on some sort of a legalization plan. I think it was during the legislative session in 2017 that Senator Mattson actually had Senate Bill 73. And so I started paying attention at that time. I didn't really get involved, but started paying attention. And then once Senate Bill 73 actually got shot down in the House of Representatives, I noticed a group called Truce put together a legislative wrap-up session, and I invited my son, and then we went. And so that was the first opportunity I got to meet actual advocates that were doing this. And so they talked about next steps, talked about the possibility of a citizen ballot initiative. And so I continued to pay attention until they were ready with an actual ballot initiative. And I got involved by collecting signatures.
So, very cool. Okay.
Yeah. And that's where I met Pam Harrison, Mario. I met Micah. In fact, for a long time, I kind of waved my hands at people going, hey guys, I'm here. I will volunteer. I will do anything. Please let me help. And I think at that time, all those groups, Utah Patients Coalition and Truce, were just far too busy collecting signatures. And so I actually drove from Eagle Mountain out near Lehigh to an event in Ogden. And I just said, hey guys, I'm here. I'm going to help. I don't care what you guys have to say.
So by way of your firsthand experience, you and your son, Tiffany, the pain management helped you, or you became a cannabis advocate.
Yeah.
I guess is the route we're headed, right?
Exactly. And not I hadn't planned on doing this.
I hear that a lot. You would be surprised. Just about every patient or patient mom I have had the pleasure of speaking with, Tiffany, says something very similar.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny, something happens to you when you're a mom and you're angry and you see your child has been hurt, and you can't help them, you know. So I did everything in my power to figure out a way to help them. First, get him out of the state of Utah, let him go somewhere where he can medicate safely, more effectively most of the time.
What were his physicians telling you all at this time? While he was trying to manage this and at the same time depart from the opioids, what did doctors say?
You know, after he got kicked out of the pain clinic, he actually stopped seeing the doctors completely.
Ooh.
So, yeah,
wow. That must have been pretty scary, right?
Yeah, it was. He medicated to the best of his abilities while he was still in the state of Utah. Let's just put it that way. So, That was a hard thing to do, especially considering that my husband comes from a very conservative family. So going back to your original question,
Mm.
what did friends and family think? Initially, when I finally got started as an advocate, I was really afraid of what my husband was going to think.
Mm.
Once again, very conservative family. Mine, not so much. I have family members that have medicated with cannabis here and there most of their lives. My, close family members.
Where are you from,
Um,
Tiffany?
I was born in Montrose, Colorado,
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
but raised in Utah.
Mm.
Um, and, so my husband was pretty accepting. He understood that my son and I did the research. And my husband's an intelligent man, and he could definitely take a look at the research that we've done, and he accepted it. And he says, if this is the route we have to go, this is what we have to do.
Mm.
And so he was actually pretty great, because when I was collecting signatures, he was just there to support me in any way possible. If there was an area that was low in signatures, I'd look at him and go, can you get me a hotel room and tell me how fast? And so I was there, because no matter what happened, I was not going to let this lose. I wasn't going to let us get defeated this time. So, but the interesting thing is that this isn't just my son's cannabis health story. This is my own too.
Mm.
When I was in Colorado and he and I were picking up some of those strains, the last time I smoked was when I was a teenager. I made a choice not to use cannabis because I had children. It was illegal. And I had a lot to lose if I got arrested or ticketed for it.
What would you medicate for, Tiffany?
Me?
Mm-hmm.
I medicated for anxiety and depression.
Right. Mm.
So, and of course, when I was in Colorado with my son, I actually made sure to smoke everything that my son was smoking, because it had been such a long time. It was like, I got to find out what this is all about. I know things have changed a lot. And so that's when I found out that it really, really, really helped my anxiety.
Yeah.
It was
what was the telltale moment? Do you remember? Like the moment you realized, like, wow, I'm not feeling so anxious anymore.
It's not even the anxiousness. With anxiety comes overthinking. Depending on how your anxiety is, my overthinking can be this voice in my head that tells me constantly that I'm no good. I will think back on conversations I had 5 years ago and say, oh, I should have said that instead. Sure. It's just this constant chatter in your head that's telling you that you should worry about that. You should worry about this. You should worry about everything. Just these small little minute things. And I found that cannabis shut those up. It made them stop. And then of course, when I did have a full-blown anxiety attack, I would use cannabis and the anxiety would subside. I now actually am a legal medical patient in Utah.
Right. Where did you get your card, and what was the experience like?
The experience was really, really good. It actually started, I was complaining about pain in my shoulder in March.
Right.
Ironically enough, I actually fell down at the Capitol during a rally.
Ouch.
Tripped over the media's news cords and fell down and caught myself, tore my rotator cuff and ruptured my bicep.
Ah, ouch. Very ouch.
Yeah, so, I ignored it for a while using a little bit of ibuprofen for it. And I was complaining about being in a lot of pain. And I actually had a doctor reach out to me and say, we could get you set up on cannabis, get you set up on a card, because the pain that you're feeling constantly that doesn't go away with the ibuprofen, he's like, you qualify. And I actually was not going to get a card. Because the limits that our providers have on the number of patients, I kind of looked at it and thought, eventually I can go in, get an MRI, have my doctor take a look at it, and eventually get some surgery, and it's going to help. So I chose, I knew it was wrong with my shoulder. I just chose not to become a patient because I figured there were other people that were more needed it more than I did.
Right.
So, but I became a patient. The process was really good. I mean, when you have a provider who knows the law well, knows the process, it's extremely easy.
So
The
this was
hardest
your
part,
primary care physician we're talking about? That, that you went through?
it was actually a pain doctor who wrote
Mhm.
my first recommendation letter.
Oh, I see.
He is not a QMP, nor will he be able to become a QMP.
Mm-hmm.
I did eventually go see a QMP with Terra Wellness, and that QMP knew, I mean, they had the process down so well, they made it super easy for the patient.
Awesome.
The hardest part was just navigating the state's website.
Now,
That was it.
are you still finding it a bit clunky or?
I do.
Mhm.
I'm getting to the point where I'm going to be renewing my card pretty soon.
Right.
So we'll see how that process is. My card actually expires in December.
Yeah.
Got an appointment towards the end of this month, so I can go ahead and see the pain doctor again. Once after I see the doctor, then I'll go ahead and do my renewal process and
Got it.
everything.
Got
Yeah.
it.
So, but yeah, it's just the state's website was just a little hard to understand. And it could be because I was doing it on my phone.
Mm-hmm.
It could be because, maybe it's a little clunky. I don't know. We'll see.
So switching gears, what is your preferred method of consumption?
I prefer microdosing.
Right.
And I prefer a blend of 1-to-1. So 1 part THC, 1 part CBD. It seems to be, for me, my perfect blend. And it's even perfect for pain as far as,
Right.
as I'm concerned as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I also prefer topicals. I think it's good for patients to have a lot of choices because not all of them work the same all the time. And sometimes you need something faster. I have a dry herb vaporizer. Sometimes if I've got a panic attack that is setting in, I need to hurry up and use my vaporizer really fast so that the panic will go away. And then of course with that, when you're treating anxiety and panic, with cannabis, you have to be very, very careful the strains that you're using too. Because those, cannabis itself can, cause paranoia. And that's
Yeah,
what
exactly. So which ones do you prefer and utilize, and where do you get them?
well, I haven't found anything in Utah as far as well, actually, that's not true. I was able to get a strain up at it was Wholesome Company. It
Oh,
was
right, and
actually,
Bountiful.
that's right. That one's in Bountiful. That is actually where I chose to register my letter.
Got it. Got it.
Mainly because I know the owner, the people who started it up.
Rich. Yeah, they're wonderful people up there. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so oh my gosh, is it terrible that I cannot remember the strain? That is so
Not at
awful.
all.
Oh,
What does it
Sunday
taste
Driver.
like? What?
It was actually Sunday Driver.
Sunday Driver. Okay. Yes, yes. Interesting that you're finding Sunday Driver helps alleviate anxiety and stress.
As long as I use it in small doses,
Small doses. So,
I have to be very careful.
mhm.
Yeah.
What dose works
I'm,
for you currently?
well, right now, so me, it's hard because my particular dry herb vaporizer doesn't do dosing. It's pretty basic.
Mm,
And so really I'll start off myself with just 1 or 2 hits,
right.
give it a little while to just kind of set in and just gauge it from there. I'm a proponent for, going slow.
Sure.
I I don't mind getting high at all. I don't like getting messed up. Most of the time I need to continue to work. I need to continue to function. I need to continue to run my household and be a parent. That's the reason I use cannabis, because that takes the anxiety and the panic away so that I can function better than I used to.
Right.
So, yeah.
Comparing before and after your experience with cannabis, after discovering cannabis, life before, life after, what would you say?
Life before was actually absolutely miserable. And
I'm so sorry
you
to hear that, Tiffany.
You could actually ask my husband too. He would say that as well. My anxiety was so bad that sometimes he didn't even want to go out in public with me.
Oh, wow.
And then of course, you know, right now we're just talking about anxiety. It's not on the conditions list. I'm just benefiting from my pain in my shoulder right now, but my goal is to eventually be seen by the Compassionate Use Board. See if my doctor will go ahead and petition them so that I can get cannabis for anxiety. Because I'm thinking, you know, after things settle down with COVID a bit, I'm going to go in, get my surgery, get my shoulder fixed. So it'll be no more card, you know, for my pain. And then there goes my benefits of anxiety, you know. But it was miserable before. I'd taken Xanax before, I've taken Klonopin, and I've taken a whole slew of antidepressants too. And with those antidepressants and those anti-anxiety medications, there were side effects. Anti-anxiety meds made me a zombie. Great, the anxiety was gone, but I couldn't think straight. I couldn't function. I could zone out and stare off into space. But with cannabis, I can function every day. I have a good job. I have promoted through my job. I do really well, and my husband now is getting more and more comfortable being with me out in public. I'm getting more and more comfortable being out in public, whereas before cannabis, I couldn't do that. So I feel like my brain, like, you know, your doctors talk about all the time, you having a hormonal imbalance. I don't know if it was a hormonal imbalance. I mean, granted, I'm not a doctor, but I think it was a cannabinoid deficiency.
Interesting idea. I mean, have you mentioned that to your doctor? And if you have, what was their response?
She is definitely a supporter of cannabis, my primary care physician. But she currently works for a practice who will not allow her to become a QMP. And so she finds it interesting, but she continues to do the things that she's supposed to do and talk to me about, you know, other medications and stuff like that. And I just refuse to do it. You know, just this works better. Even for my shoulder, though, she prescribed a really strong anti-inflammatory. And I said, do it, but I'm not going to take it. And she did. You know, as a responsible doctor, she can't, you know, prescribe the cannabis, but she did what she's supposed to the best of her ability. And I just refused to take it because cannabis works better. I like high CBD for my pain. So
on a final note, and thank you for that, Tiffany, we appreciate that. It's been lovely chatting with you. When you find yourself explaining what cannabis does for you to friends and people maybe you don't know, what do you tell them?
I give them a brief overview of my story, for one. And then I also, you know, we talk facts. You know, one of the things that I've been able to do in my own office is, you know, once I became an activist, I actually never stopped talking about it.
Interesting. Right.
I didn't. I talked to everybody. During Prop 2, when we were campaigning, I talked to my HR. I talked to my boss. I talked to just about everybody. In fact, once we were able to get the Utah Medical Cannabis Act passed, I thought, okay, next steps are, what are we going to do about the people that work for my company? And I know they're already medicating. What are we going to do for them? What are we going to do for people who we get hired? And so I actually worked with our HR they talked to our sister company and come to find out, or not our sister company, our parent company, come to find out our parent company already had processes in place to treat patients as any other patient that had a prescription. Excellent. So, you know, it was really nice to find out that we had policies in place that were going to support patients who were working in this state. We did the same way for my husband's company. My daughter is the first medical cannabis patient to be hired at my husband's company.
How about that?
So I guess basically, you know, I just never shut up about it, and I'm always trying to educate people about the different cannabinoids. And sometimes, sadly, I can get a little snotty. I'll look at somebody and go, okay, you and I can have an argument about cannabis, but I want you to name 7 cannabinoids and tell me what they do for your body.
Interesting. Yeah.
And
Speaking of, oh, sorry about that. Go ahead, please, Tiffany.
it usually makes people take a step back and go, well, I don't know what a cannabinoid is. And I was like, well, you and I can't have this conversation anymore.
Right.
So.
Who are some of the people that you admire within the green scene?
Oh my goodness. Some of the people that I admire, Desiree Hennessy, for sure. You know, she just completely impresses me with the fact that, you know, with her religion had a really hard time with cannabis, and she did the research and she knew this was the best option for her son, and she fought for it, and she fights all the time to help change people's minds. I do the same thing. I really admire Mario. Mario is the constant.
Yeah.
And you know what, I really love him so much because it's helped him so much. And he just, you know, he just doesn't let anything stand in his way. Pam Harrison, Pam Harris, oh my goodness. That lady, her lifelong advocacy just impresses me. I just, you know, I never paid attention to politics before this at all. And she got me involved, and she got me paying attention, and I learned a lot about the whole process, and it is an ugly process. But you just gotta, you know, you gotta stand strong, you gotta stick with it, and you gotta do what you know is right for yourself, for other people. You know, I started out doing this for my son. I ended up benefiting from it. My daughter also benefits from it. She suffers from endometriosis pain. We found out cannabis helps with that.
How about
and so, you know, and you know, Christine Stenquist from Truce.
of course. Yeah.
I really admired that. No matter what, no matter how many times they were in this from the beginning, and no matter how many times they got shot down up at the Capitol, over and over again between, I think she'd been working on things since 2014, you know, with Senator Madsen and just with everybody. She just never gave up. Same with Desiree, you know, and Desiree continues to fight for patients, and I appreciate her doing that, because at this time, I actually have grown a little tired. I don't know how it is that they keep going and they keep fighting, because I've gotten a little tired and a little frustrated in some areas. Sure. So I've taken a step back for a little bit. So.
Well, Tiffiny Malo, thank you so much for spending time with us Salt-Baked Patient Profiles today. We've had a great time learning about your wellness trail, and we'll look forward to hearing from you in the future.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys taking the time to talk to me. I always felt my story was kind of small compared to others. So.
Well, it's historic, and you know, small, right. Large, you know, it still has meaning for you and all the people that care about you and that you care about.
Yeah, most definitely did.
Yeah. So do have a wonderful day, Tiffany, and thank you again.
All right, thank you.
We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.